Mr. Thomas Friedman, thank you very much for joining us.
Pleasure, Don. Thank you for having me.
Well, you know, I think the fact that you're not a big Netanyahu fan is quite obvious by now, but I think this time he really got under your skin.
You know, it really is not about anyone personal. I can assure you of that. For me, it's really about the moment and the opportunity, and that's what I was really trying to focus on. It seems to me that after Oslo, after the complete breakdown between Israelis and Palestinians after Oslo, that we've slowly worked our way back to a moment where for the first time in the West Bank, you have a decent and improving Palestinian political authority and a vastly improved Palestinian security authority. And the theme of this column, and what my whole focus is that, you know, I don't want Israel to look back and have people say about Israel what it said about the Palestinians, that it never missed an opportunity to miss an opportunity. And it seemed to me that this is the best opportunity in a long time, let me just finish this thought, to see if we can actually get a real peace process going for a secure peace. And that given this opportunity, it's in Israel's overwhelming interest to test, I don't know the answer, but to do everything possible to test whether it has a real Palestinian partner for peace. That was really all I was trying to say.
Well, you really were explicit. You said, knock it off. That was the headline. And then you said, Israel behaved like a spoiled child. What do you mean by that?
Well, you know, I don't usually do Dvar Torah on my columns. I think it's pretty obvious. You know, a spoiled child is one who basically expects to behave in a way, whether it does the right thing or the wrong thing, it will get its way. And I compared Israel to Hezbollah in Lebanon, which behaved terribly in 2006 and was rewarded by Iran and Syria with more weapons, more money, more support to do the same stupid thing over again. And it seems to me that we're close to doing the same thing with Israel. That's not in Israel's interest, it seems to me, and not in our interest.
So you said stupid thing, and you know, it's not the first time. You also said that we have a drunk driver in the seat. And I was wondering, are these it's only you, or is it Obama's voice? Meaning, would Obama sign this article also?
I have no idea what the president thinks about this article. I haven't spoken about it to him. We don't just sort of, you know, schmooze about my columns. You know, all I can tell you is this. You know, I think that it's something that I think Israelis don't fully appreciate. We are not your grandfather's America anymore. What do I mean by that? I mean, we are in the middle of the worst financial crisis since the Great Depression. I was just reading an email from a friend of mine, a senior naval officer, on my way over here. And he was telling me his brother has lost his job, he's lost his car, and he's about to lose his house, okay? A lot of Americans are really, really hurting right now, okay? And we care about every dollar we spend. Israel never has to worry about me. Israel always, you know, at the end of the day is going to have my support. It had me at hello. But I have to tell you, a lot of Americans, they're not anti-Israel. No, don't suggest that at all. They just are fed up. They don't care about this conflict anymore. And over time, that will become a national security problem for Israel, given the fact that the United States is your only friend. You had me at hello. You'll never lose me. You are losing the American people, not to opposition, not to dislike. They are fed up. They're fed up with the Palestinians, believe me. They're fed up with the Middle East in general, but they're also fed up with Israel when they see their president working hard to try to tee up an opportunity where Israel can, and all we're asking is just test, go all the way to just test whether you have a real partner. And you say, no, first pay me, let Pollard out of jail, have Abu Mazen sing Hatikva in perfect Yiddish, and then we'll think about testing. And right here, it rubs a lot of people the wrong way.
So if I get you correctly, can I understand that payday, if Israel keeps going in this, what you called a drunk driver path, payday is just around the corner? November 4th starts the payday?
Yeah, you know, I have no idea where this is going to go. These are long-term trends I'm talking about. And what worries me again is, you know, I don't even write about this issue very much anymore. And so when I do, I try to make it be something that people will take notice of. But most importantly, Americans, and I'm afraid young American Jews, they're just drifting away from this. They don't get it anymore, okay? Mm-hmm. And that worries me. That's so different from when I grew up in the 60s. You know, Israel wasn't only the center of my life, it's why I went into Middle East studies, why I went into journalism, but of all my cohort, my generation of American Jews. And people just don't get it anymore, okay? They don't understand a lot of this stuff. And I don't think it's just because it hasn't been good hasbara. It hasn't been perfectly explained to them. It's because they look in front of their eyes and they say, okay, we finally have a decent Palestinian partner. They're finally doing the right things. Why don't we really, would it be such a big deal for Israel to say to the United States and the American president, Mr. President, you know, we really don't think a settlement freeze will make a difference. But you do. You do. We gave you 10 months. We don't think the Palestinians did enough with that. But you think another 2 months is all you're asking. What the heck, Mr. President, this one's for you. Is that so hard?
I can really feel your frustration, but I think that, you know, even around Netanyahu, there is a bigger frustration because as they see it, it's not about a 2-month moratorium or a house in Elkanah or in Tappuach or whatever. It's about, you know, his word, his standing as a leader, and it's about the core issues. They say if we cave in on this issue, what will happen? We'll come to the real deal.
Look, you know, I'm not saying one should be indifferent to those issues, but let's look at it from a global point of view, okay? What if Netanyahu said, look, I had said this was going to be a 10-month freeze, but we kind of wasted 9 of those months. The Palestinians have finally gotten their act together. I want to stand before the world. I want to stand before the world, and I want the whole world to be able to see us going the extra mile, okay? Because God forbid, Dan, sometime in the next year or two, Israel may find itself in a situation where it has to take on Iran in some military way. And if that happens, okay, I'm not advocating it. All I'm saying is if that happens, if there was a legitimate, serious peace process going, I think the world would weigh that action in a different way, certainly, than if there isn't.
But you make it sound like
there's multiple audiences here.
I know, but you make it sound like it's only about the Israelis, okay? And one can have criticism about the government, but you need two for a tango. And when you look at the situation here, maybe it's, you know, Obama's naive, as they say here, or maybe he just doesn't know the area enough. But it's like he drove the Palestinians up the tree, and all they have to do now is just sit and do nothing.
Yeah, I mean, I respect that argument. There's something to it. If I were to look back at the last 2 years, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. I would say everybody made mistakes, okay? I think Abu Mazen made mistakes. I think Obama made mistakes. I think Prime Minister Netanyahu made mistakes. I would agree with that analysis. But we are where we are right now. And where we are is with Prime Minister Netanyahu came here after all that's gone on, and he looked the president in the eye in the Oval Office and said, I want you to invite Abu Mazen and myself to Camp David. I am serious. I am a serious player. That's with all the complaints of the last 2 years. He asked the president to do that, okay? Abu Mazen, with all his complaints and all his mishigas and all the mistakes he made, nevertheless, under pressure from Obama and the Arabs, came to the table. Obama is now fully engaged, putting together a military package of assistance to Israel that will assure Israel's qualitative advantage over all its neighbors for another decade. So everybody's made mistakes. Everybody is now at the table. Do you just want to walk away from this? Because someone says, oh, if you extend it for 2 months, you'll be breaking your word? I mean, these are huge historical opportunities. This is a great intersection. Do you really want to blow it for that? Mm-hmm. I can understand. The Prime Minister's word is about, will he endanger the people and the state of Israel? That's a promise he must never break. But to say, well, I'm going to give them 2 more months because the American president, our only friend in the world, has asked me to go the extra mile to test whether we have a Palestinian partner for peace? And you think the Israeli people are going to condemn the prime minister for that? That's certainly not the Israeli people I know.
But you know, at the end of the day, Netanyahu was not elected to set out Qadima's agenda. And 2 years ago, there were democratic votes, and the majority of the Israelis voted right. They went right. So, you know, talking about democracy, shouldn't you respect, shouldn't the America and the administration respect the outcome of the elections?
Sure. I mean, at the end of the day, we must and we will. And if this is the prime minister's decision, it will be his decision, and he and the people of Israel will live with it. But we're a democracy too. And we may take other decisions down the road as well. I don't know when, I don't know how.
I want to take you back to your article, your last column. You quote Netanyahu as saying Netanyahu knows he can't make peace with some of his lunatics in his cabinet, and then you go on and say he will blow up his cabinet once for a deal. Are these words that you know Netanyahu spoke to Obama in the Oval Office? These are words that Obama heard from Netanyahu?
You know, part of what I do in writing columns, Dana, is I'm a reporter. The reporter in me certainly has led me to the conclusion that Netanyahu has made it clear to the administration that he only wants to create a different coalition to actually make peace, not just to come to the table. It's not an illogical position, but ultimately I don't see how it works, because I don't think you can get to the table without a different coalition. You know, right now, as I look at the political landscape in Israel, you know, part of my frustration as someone who cares deeply about Israel is that I think Prime Minister Netanyahu is the only one right now who actually could make peace, who could actually negotiate a deal and deliver a majority for that deal, okay? I don't see anybody else right now on the horizon. So believe me, if I saw him doing that, you can't imagine. I'd be very happy to be his biggest supporter, okay? This is not personal. I actually like talking to the prime minister. He's interesting, he's engaging, he's funny. This is not personal.
But, you know, there is this big enigma in Israel. Everyone is asking, I think, in the States also, is does he want and he can't, or he can't but he wants? Do you think you know that he wants? Has he crossed that line?
I think that this is one of the great questions. By the way, I sympathize with the prime minister. These are really hard calls, okay? But these are not simple matters, and I understand that. But to lead is to choose, you know? And ultimately, a leader has to choose. And by the way, the choice I'm asking Israel to make right now, Dan, is not to sign a deal with Abu Mazen. Where do we go? Where do we withdraw? Where do we leave? No, actually, it's to create a test, a really test where you take out all the other extraneous stuff, settlement building, okay? And you sit across the table and everybody, now, show me your cards. We've taken all that away, all right? What are you ready to agree to? I'm not asking the prime minister to risk anything in terms of Israel's security. I am asking him to risk something in terms of his politics. There's no question about that. But to lead is to choose.
And after 30 years in this business and in this region, this timetable that Obama set, this deadline in a region where deadlines are just broken, you know, by the minute. Do you believe there is possibility to reach an agreement?
You know, it's a very good question, and it's a hard one for me to answer. I don't know anymore, and part of what I'm saying is I'd like that test too. You know, I don't know anymore. I'm not a friar, you know, about the Palestinians. I know I've written about them in a very, very critical way. I understand the tough situation they're in, but I'm also calling on them to choose as well. But then this is how I look at the Middle East today, okay? I look at it as a region that has a huge population youth bulge, okay? Growing up in Egypt, in Saudi Arabia, in Syria, in Jordan, okay? I see it as a region, because of oil, that is falling behind every global trend, all right? I think the Middle East is, the Arab Middle East, is heading for some very significant social and political explosions. That the last 50 years are not going to look like the previous 50 years as this Facebook generation of Arabs grows up, looks for jobs, and seeks political expression. In this kind of Middle East, I would love to see Israel behind a wall, okay? Behind a wall as all these things go on, but a wall that is mutually recognized by Israelis, Arabs, and Palestinians, because I think there is going to be turmoil around Israel. That's how I see the region.
Okay. I just want to ask you one last question because we have midterm.
Have a nice day.
Yeah, really. Thank you so much. I wanted to say that you really passed the Israeli test because you don't want to be a friar. So now everyone knows that you really know us well. Finally, you know, I don't have to tell you what's happening to the print, the layouts, the changing. In a way, you're in endangered spaces. Because in 10 years from now, will an institution like Thomas Friedman be possible?
Well, it's an interesting question. I don't really think about it. I try to focus on what I do. We're in a transition, as you say, in journalism, and to me, it's all about substance. It's not about whether you blog or whether you tweet or whether you write a column in the New York Times. It's about what you put in that column. You are what you do, and that applies to states as well. That if you build a diamond hard reality about you, then no amount of criticism will stick. If you build something of quality, and if you don't, no amount of spinning and hasbara, will save you. And I've watched this debate about asking Palestinians to recognize Israel as a Jewish state. I understand where that comes from. I understand where that desire comes from. But one thing I've learned in life, Dan, all the things I value in life are things that I do voluntarily or people around me do voluntarily. What I want from Palestinians is not that we force them because we have more weight and more pressure and more Congress that we can force you to spit out the words, we recognize the Jewish state. No, I don't want their recognition. I want the voluntary respect that would come from them from a kind of mutual peace of each side respecting each other, respecting each other's securities. I want them to look on Israel with the respect of saying, that's a country we want to be like. That's a society we want to emulate. That's the recognition I want. I don't want the recognition of someone who I twist their arm and they spit it out. What matters in life is what people do voluntarily.
Thomas Friedman, thank you very much for taking the time.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.